it's Isabel, A Curious Tale. Today I'd like to share with you and explore an out-of-print tarot deck, the Glastonbury Tarot by Lisa Tenzin Dolma. And I thought it would be fun to have a look through the deck together and also just use it as a bit of a portal for travelling to Glastonbury and chatting about some of the things I love to do there. It's a place that's very close to my heart, and I thought we could look at the cards and just delve into some of my recommendations if you're thinking of visiting Glastonbury anytime soon. It's somewhere I've been a lot of times and I hope to go many more times. And firstly, I wanted to thank Marty's Divination and Dolls because I was looking for this deck for a very long time. I think anyone who's into out-of-print decks especially knows the constant refreshing of eBay that can take place. But Marty's Divination and Dolls knew that I was looking for this deck and kindly sent me a link to the eBay listing that had a really good price, because he already has the deck and had been posting some beautiful pictures, and that just made me want it even more. So thank you very much for the tip. And this is the deck, published in the late 90s. I edged mine actually in this beautiful golden yellow colour to sort of reflect the image on the back of the cards, which is the tour at Glastonbury, which is perhaps one of the most iconic symbols of the village. So just as a really quick introduction, most people in the UK, if they hear Glastonbury, they think of the music festival that takes place there, which is probably the biggest music festival in the UK, arguably. But Glastonbury, the town, I think it's definitely, it's not a village. Is it a town? It's very rural. I don't know the exact term, but let's say town has so much to offer, and it's such a wonderful place to visit. I think at any point in time in the year, probably just not when the festival is going on. Although actually I've heard a lot of people who live in Glastonbury say it can be pretty dead during the festival because everyone's at the festival and they're not in town. So anyway, I thought it would be fun to just have a look at this beautiful deck and have a little chat about Glastonbury. So, and then I wanted to share just a few books as well that I got in Glastonbury that I think are very interesting. So first we have the Fool, Percival, and this deck really delves into the mysteries, the legend of King Arthur, the Isle of Avalon, and a lot of these British sort of cultural myths and legends, which is really interesting. And it comes with this pretty meaty guidebook, which goes into the explanation for each card, and then it in terms of the divinatory meaning, but it also has really great amount of text about the figures depicted in the card and the image in general. So you can really use this deck to learn about Arthurian legends, about British myths and legends in general. I think that's very valuable. I love decks like that are a tarot deck that you can use for divination, but they go further than that, and they're like a jumping off point to learn about a whole cultural history. So we have the Fool. It's funny, I realised a lot of my favourite decks have a black border and very colourful imagery and a glossy, like the Mariel Tarot First Edition comes to mind. Just a lot of them have this, I don't know why I'm so drawn to it. The Magician, Merlin. I feel like there's a lot of these figures that are very well known in popular consciousness, and then many that aren't. I really love the High Priestess, Morgana. the Empress, Guinevere. So yeah, just to chat about Glastonbury. I've been lucky to visit numerous times, and my absolute favourite place to stay in Glastonbury, although I haven't stayed there every time I visited, is Covenstead. It's the most stunning hotel, not too far from the main street. I mean, not too far, I mean about 2 minutes walk, if that, perhaps a minute's walk. And it's just absolutely full of antiques and occult paraphernalia from all around the world. And the rooms are, themed. They have a hand fasting themed room. It's all sort of pastel hues and lace. They have a sort of dark Chinese inspired room, a Fae inspired room, and some of the best parts there are not only the breakfast, which is very, very generous, and you sort of sit on this big wooden table in the morning with everyone that's staying there. I think there are about maybe 5 rooms or so, not too many, and you'll have a lovely, delicious breakfast where they ask, what you want and they cook it for you. But also there is a sort of shrine room or altar room, which, if you're staying there, you're invited to utilise as you wish and enjoy, and it's absolutely stunning. I mean, we're talking taxidermy, peacocks, ritual objects from around the world. It's a really lovely place, and the owners are very kind as well. You just have to book really far in advance because, especially around any solstice, it gets very booked up. That's the tower, is the tour with this real sense of rebirth, and the waters make me think of the Somerset levels are sort of known, so Somerset being the county in which Glastonbury is found, the Somerset levels do tend to flood quite a bit, so I think that could be referring to that. So that's my absolute favourite place to stay in Glastonbury. And in terms of my favourite place to eat, because I think that's very important, there's a Rainbow's End cafe on the high street, which is vegetarian and vegan food, which is the most wonderful, homemade, rustic, big portions, and really, really good cakes as well. So if you do visit, I would really recommend going to Rainbow's End Cafe, because that is probably my favourite place to eat in Glastonbury, although I will say there's a lot of good places. The world's sort of cosmic egg. And then, my absolute favourite things to do in Glastonbury, obviously visiting Chalice Well is very, probably the classic thing to do, isn't it? But there's also a place called the White Spring, which is sort of, if you were to walk from Chalice Well towards the Tor, where you climb to the top of the Tor, which of course is something you have to do if you visit, if that's possible for you. But the White Spring is, as it sounds, a spring of water, but it's just one of the most relaxing places. It's this sort of cave-like space, and they ask you to turn off any electronic devices when you go in there as well, which I think is a really nice touch. And there's just places where people have tied ribbons to honour the goddess Bridget and given offerings, and there's the water there as well. So that's a really wonderful place to visit as well. And obviously, it's a small place, so it's pretty easy to visit many of these places in even just one day or easily 2 days. The Eight of Swords, I really love these really vibrant colours mixed with the quite tranquil expressions of the figures in the cards. And another place that I really love to visit when I go to Glastonbury is the Goddess Temple. Actually, one of their buildings is basically next to the Covenstead Hotel, or would you call it bed and breakfast probably? And they have a space on the high street as well, and they have a lot of events, especially around festivals on the Wheel of the Year and different courses and things. I have been to a session in bulk many years ago, which I thought was really wonderfully done. So that's the extent to my experience with the Goddess Temple, but I thought it was very interesting. Everyone there was very welcoming, so yeah, I think that's a really cool place. I've heard people describe Glastonbury sort of like Disneyland for people interested in sort of the broad terms of paganism or witchcraft or tarot or anything esoteric. And I think it's a really interesting place because you could definitely experience it in a very consumerist way. You could see, wow, there's all these shops just selling all this stuff, and you could see that in a negative light, but I think it's for you to take what you will from it. I think everything's fun. You can walk up the tour, walk around the back of the tour, really quite quickly find yourself within nature with these beautiful trees. You can visit Child's Well in the surrounding botanical gardens. You can, do all these things, and you can, treat yourself to a bit of esoteric jewellery, like this beautiful goat's head ring that let's see if I can do the classic, show it to you, that I got in Glastonbury probably 6 years ago, maybe. Yeah, why not do everything? I think it's what you make of it, and you can experience it in a more sort of aesthetics and consumerist way. You can experience it in a very meaningful way, and you can enjoy both as well, which is what I like to do. Oh, and another tip would be go to the charity shops on the high street. I love charity shopping, but I would say the charity shops on the high street are really good because a lot of people that live in Glastonbury are interested in all these magical things, and so they have and donate these kind of items. So yeah, charity shopping in Glastonbury is very good. I found some very nice things over the years. And I think it's just fun that, being in the middle of the southern British countryside, there's that sort of people you often meet there who are maybe more like, there's the more posh like countryside people, there's local people who their families have been there for generations, and then you'll find someone barefoot playing the ukulele, wearing a cape, and I think that's that's great. It's unexpected to be sort of so far from a big city in a way, and to just find such an eclectic mix of people in a relatively small place. I think that's one of the things that to me makes Glastonbury really special. Yeah, I just really love the vibrant colours of this deck, and in the guidebook, Lisa, who created the deck, she writes that she painted all of these herself, and she used actually a lot of her own friends as references, for the paintings, and she painted them around Glastonbury, some of them in their own gardens, and then some of them she added more sort of obvious backgrounds like the Tor and the garden. This brings to mind some of the archways in the botanical gardens around Chalice Well, for example. And then this, to me it looks like they're sort of walking up the back of the Tor, because the Tor being the tower that sits watching over Glastonbury, is quite a reasonably steep incline up there, which you can see as well in the back of this image. We've got the Tor, and this beautiful purple hue has been chosen for the hill. There's also so many events that happen in Glastonbury, and a lot of them are free to attend. And whenever I visited, there have been these leaflets, that you can find that will actually list all of them as well. So it's quite easy if you're visiting just to see, what's going on, especially around the solstices. Obviously, the summer solstice being a very popular time for people to visit Glastonbury, and of course the nearby Stonehenge, where many people congregate for the summer solstice, although unfortunately, there's been a lot of talk about how authorities have sort of, they don't really want people going to the standing stones in Stonehenge, which on the one hand there's the argument that they don't want them to be damaged, which it can be understandable in other ways, though. It's part of, it's a religious site for many people, and it's part of their worship, whatever, from multiple traditions, and it's also quite tied to the sort of authorities. There's a lot of ties with their mistreatment of the traveller community in the UK, and I feel like there's been a lot of instances where the two have come together, people going to Stonehenge and the authorities mistreating people who would like to follow a traveller lifestyle, as, why shouldn't they if they want to, but unfortunately they often face undue discrimination for that, and that's also something that is very closely tied to Glastonbury's history, especially in over the past few decades, perhaps since the 70s especially. So some of these images are quite flat and simplistic, but I think it's really about the vibrant colours for me in this deck, and that sort of, these illustrations really remind me of the 90s, and that sort of how you'd see like the Wiccan religion represented in popular culture. I grew up in Brighton, and there were just a lot of cafes and shops and things very much with this aesthetic. It's very evocative. You're imagining a vegetarian lunch with lots of salads, and you've got like a rustic teacup, and there's people doing art, and it's very evocative of a certain I don't know, it's definitely got a certain flavour. So that was the deck. I think it's really beautiful. One thing that really stands out, especially when you're sort of coming from looking at decks that have been published in recent years, I think, tarot has long had, in terms of Western publishing houses, there's long been a conversation that tarot could be much more inclusive in terms of the figures that are represented in tarot decks. And this was made in the 90s, and I think it wasn't even a conversation then, but I think you could look at this deck if you're used to seeing, more modern publications, and say, wow, it really stands out that this deck could perhaps be more diverse in its representations of people. However, I don't think it takes away from how special the deck is, and I think, just in my opinion, it's not that every single deck has to show every single type of person. It's more that publishing houses need to make sure that they're publishing a diverse array of decks, not just decks that only show certain people, so I think it's more from my perspective, it's more on the people who are publishing the decks to make sure they're not only focusing on one type, because if a creator is being authentic, that might, just to their own experience, that might look a certain way, it might be a bit homogenous, but then someone else might have a different experience. And I think as long as when we, especially if we read for other people, when we're curating our libraries, we try and think about that. I think it's not that every single deck, has to necessarily include everyone, but that we can be mindful that our library does, and publishing houses can be mindful that their catalogue does, and that as a modern, current deck creator, we can think, okay, if I want my deck to really resonate with a lot of different people, then maybe I should try and be more inclusive in thinking. That's just my opinion, but I do think this deck is really beautiful. I think some of the references, it does have references to Christianity, but I would not say it is a Christian deck, because it has a broad characters there, but for example, the devil is St. Dunstan, and I think, there's, in British history, there's a lot of saints that were previously pagan gods or goddesses. I'm just looking for, in particular, we have, I think it's Temperance, yes, that's Bridget. So she's a good example of a goddess who is a pagan goddess and also a Christian saint, and so there's a real crossover that this deck definitely looks into, and I think that's interesting. I don't personally resonate with the sort of very Christian imagery, but I think in this deck it's not done in the sense of organised religion, it's done more in the sense of the history of Glastonbury and just British history in general, and really showing that it can be pretty hard to draw a distinct line between what is pagan, what is Christian, and does one even need to draw a line, so that is the deck. I hope it was interesting to see the images. I think they're very beautiful, and I think it's a great deck for anyone who's interested in Glastonbury. I definitely want to visit Glastonbury and obviously take this deck with me and draw some cards by Chalice Well at the top of the tour in the forest. That will be a wonderful experience, and I'm thinking preparing it. The Dark Goddess Tarot definitely comes to mind because it has those same deep saturated hues, and the fact that it shows goddesses from many different pantheons I think works because Glastonbury is a place where a lot of different spiritual beliefs are represented, and then the Marielle Tarot because it's got a similar colour scheme and black borders, and that's one of my favourite decks. The Celtic Wisdom Tarot as well, again similar colour scheme, these vibrant colours, very much the same world, and I'll have to have a think about others. I do want to use it with my deck, the Purnima Tarot, as well, because again, black borders, vibrant hues, and then just for me, I lived in Nepal for over 10 years, and then visited Glastonbury quite a few times, and so I feel like the two decks together are like different experiences in my life. So I think it'll be lovely to use those together. Just another support too. Oh, and I just want to show two books that I got in Glastonbury. The first one, this is from the Goddess Temple, so the ancient British goddess. I think this is a very interesting book. It just delves into goddesses from the British Isles, with, you know, illustrations, photographs, sort of centering around a community of women who worship the goddess in different ways, and it's sort of set out following the Wheel of the Year as well, and different holidays, different goddesses relating to those holidays, and yeah, it's a very interesting book. I mean, any book that speaks about spiritual traditions and their history, obviously the history is always going to be something that a lot of people have, you know, there are a lot of theories. Some people say are refuted, other people don't. There's personal gnosis that comes into the picture. You know, there's a lot. So this is one perspective, but I think it's very interesting. I really like it, and it's also great that it's sort of spotlighting some very creative women who have sort of dedicated their life to worshipping various goddesses. And interestingly, Philippa Bauer's the sculpture, you can see her work there. Her art can be found around Glastonbury, including in the Rainbow's End Cafe. I believe there is a sculpture of hers there, and I wanted to also share this book that I got in Glastonbury from a shop on the High Street. So it's called Travelling Days, and it's a sort of compilation of photographs, experiences, stories from the UK's new travellers. So there are different traveller groups within the UK, and one is often referred to as new age travellers or new travellers. So these are people who might not have been born into the tradition, but who became travellers, many of them in the 60s and beyond, and it's sharing, you know, stories. There's such good pictures, like these amazing mobile houses they've created, and it's just so interesting to read about this way of life from the people themselves. I think the traveller culture is very tied to Glastonbury, and I think for people who enjoy visiting Glastonbury, it's quite interesting and arguably important to look into that history, because so much about what makes Glastonbury so magical, and the music festival as well, is very linked to the history of these people. And there's certainly a group of people who face undue struggles in the UK, definitely face prejudice, especially from the authorities, and that is detailed, you know, in this book as well. And I think it's really interesting to just read about a different way of life that is so linked to the history of Glastonbury. I want to find one of my favourite pictures. Let's see if I can find it. But yeah, it's just a really interesting read, and I don't know if you can find this book easily, you know, in different bookshops, but it is available in Glastonbury. So yeah, it's just so inspiring to see how people can live differently and just show, you know, how many different ways of life there are. So yeah, and this book as well, it discusses not just struggles, it discusses a lot of positive things, people sharing their memories, how things have changed, and you know, even just speaking about sort of prominent figures with a very balanced perspective as well. So that is Travelling Days by Alan Darling, or Darling, I don't know how you pronounce it. But yeah, very interesting read that I picked up in Glastonbury. Glastonbury has amazing bookshops. You can really find some interesting reads there, so that's another reason to visit. So yeah, I think that's pretty much all I wanted to share. Please let me know if you've been to Glastonbury, and if so, what do you think about it? Do you plan to go? Have you ever stayed in Covenstead, or have you walked to the top of the Tor? One of the most beautiful times I walked to the top of the Tor was very early morning in Imbolc. I think it was 2018 or 2019, and me and my family, we walked up to the top of the Tor to see the sunrise, and it had been snowing, so all over the fields that you could see from the top were sort of covered in almost very light dusting of snow. It was very silvery, very chilly, and it was really wonderful. And there were a few people that sort of climbed up to see the sunrise on Imbolc that day as well. And I've had wonderful memories visiting in some time as well. Obviously Glastonbury is very tied to the Fae, and they have a fairy ball there, I believe annually, which is attended by, you know, people interested in fairies and the Fae from across the UK, and that's something I've not visited yet, but I would like to go to. So if you have visited that, please let me know, because I would love to hear more about that. But yeah, that's my experience with the Glastonbury Tarot. Just started working with her, and I expect that I'll be working with her a lot. This is one of my favourite cards, the World. Oh, and I really love the what is it? The Death card as well. I look forward to finding out more about some of these British myths, and just enjoying this really wonderful deck. I think when you look for out of print decks, it almost feels like capturing a treasure from the past, and a window into how things were, and just a different insight on the tarot. So I think a lot of people get into collecting out of print decks, and just it really feels like you're finding this special treasure. So yeah, let me know, are there any out of print decks that you're looking for and you really want to find? I have a few on my list, but as usual there are some that you don't really expect to find, but we'll see. But anyway, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope the video was enjoyable, and yeah, let me know what you think. Thanks, bye.